everybody, and welcome back to Ignite Radio Live over the 5 mighty stations of Annunciation Radio. We're so blessed that you are with us, and right out of the gates, I want to simply declare God's sovereignty. He is over all. Whatever you are experiencing right now in your marriage, in your family, in your world, and we know it seems very uncertain at times, we want to declare God's sovereignty. I've got 4, I would say, my very best friends with me tonight, and we just want to open the door and talk about what's happened in the last year. Each of them, 3 of them are business owners. One of them is a professor, brings a lot of insight to this. They're all husbands and fathers. With you, like me, we're trying to work it out. We're trying to see, if you will, on the battlefield, the smoke, the fog, right? We feel maybe that the bombs have been going off and the debris is everywhere. And it's a little bit, you've heard the phrase, a fog of war. It's kind of hard to kind of get a shape of what's happening and where things are coming from. We have a new president. We have a radically new culture and a new agenda in front of us than we did a year ago, or we ever would have hoped a year ago. That's huge. That's not inconsequential. We have ecclesial realities that are playing out. We came off of a lot of the priestly scandal stuff. Let's keep it real. McCarrick. There's still the dispensation from going to Mass, and so I think a whole lot of people who are faithful Catholics would like to be in the presence of Jesus, but perhaps a good number of us have been, crippled by fear and not living our lives fully because of the way the culture has forged us with that. So this is a bit of the shape of this moment in history, this February, the second full week of 2021. And in the midst of all that, through this conversation, we're going to get real, we're going to get honest, but obviously in declaring God's sovereignty, we want to declare the light in the darkness. We want to keep it real. And to set that up, simply, I'd like to invoke what Jim Collins in his book, Good to Great, called the Stockdale Paradox. Now, just to acquaint you, and he identified a number of the features that distinguish great organizations from merely good organizations. And all of this data he put in his book, Good to Great. And one of the key features of this was what he called the Stockdale Paradox. Now, what's that? Admiral Stockdale, many of you know, he was a vice presidential candidate for a libertarian, one of the early libertarian president running for office. But he was a survivor of concentration camps, and he was asked the question, when many of your brothers died in these horrific circumstances in a concentration camp, how did you survive? And he simply gave what we call the Stockdale Paradox. Number 1, he said, I had a lively expectation of a good outcome. I was optimistic. I had confidence that there was light at the end of the tunnel, number 1. But number 2 is where many of us are challenged. He said, I dealt with the brutal facts. I looked at the brutal facts. I didn't try to gloss it over. I didn't try to pretend. I didn't try to play games with it. I looked at the reality the way it is. And if you guys have been along the road with us long enough at Ignite Radio Live, Mass Impact, we want to go there. We want to keep it real. We want to be optimistic because God is sovereign. But throughout biblical history and in this present moment, we're not going to navigate this fog of war well if we're not being brutally honest. And I mean personally, our relationship with God, our marriages, our families, and the world, the way we're responding to it. We need all the more to have these kind of conversations to discuss, well, what is reality? How are we addressing these things? So, first of all, just a quick around. We have with us, as I said, 4 awesome men. Rich Cronin, who is a husband and father, and he is the owner and head of Perrysburg Auto Mall, Cronin Auto Group. So your next car, look no further than look up PerrysburgAutomall.com. Check it out. Amazing place. We've gotten all our cars there. Walt Erickson, if you have a business, a company, and you're looking to build, which you should because we're optimistic here, right? And you want to put glass on it because you just like the outdoors and you like the beauty God has created. And Walt is your windows man. So Interstate Commercial Glass is his company. And he is a husband and father. Number 8 is going to be coming 7 months, 8 months. What do we got going here, Walt? When's due date?
Beginning of September.
So we are so excited for them. All the way over to Jeff Elmore, who is an awesome husband and father, and he and his wife run Turning Point Chiropractic. Again, we and about 93.7% of all the people we know, amazing things have been happening with us and to us in the whole realm of becoming healthy and being healthy with Dr. Jeff Elmore, and they just welcomed number 4 into the world. welcome Dr. Jeff. And the always awesome Drew the Man Blazik. You've heard his voice over our airwaves, just a convert to the Catholic faith, by the way, along with Jeff Elmore and Walt Erickson. We have 3 converts with us tonight, and Rich and I might throw ourselves in the ring because we're always going deeper and deeper being converted, but in that way of coming into the Catholic faith. Drew is a professor at Lourdes and very knowledgeable about matters, economy, politics, theology. He's a voracious consumer of good media, and he's the one who passes along. He is the curator. It sounds like a WWF title, the curator. He's a curator. He takes all that great data and he presents it, gives it to me, and I know how to focus my attention on things that really matter. And he's talked on past episodes about private revelation and the applicability of this present day. We've talked politics. We've talked all sorts of things. And Drew and Jesse, he is a parent of 5. Right, Drew?
Yeah.
All right, that's awesome. I got it down. So, brothers, it's February 2020. We don't quite know that COVID is going to be what it is. We maybe anticipated. 3 of you are business owners. You have responsibilities there. The tumultuous political season is playing out. And I just want to ask you, what are key challenges you faced? And from the past 12 months, what did you learn? Challenges faced, and how are you better? What did you learn? Let's start with Walt.
So, Greg, I'm going to take you back one more month because my family was in Destin, Florida in January. And while we were on vacation down there is when we first, really heard that I think that the coronavirus was, quote unquote, in the United States. And it actually reminded me of the front end story of a Matthew Kelly book. For those of you who have read it, a story about the plague and the little boy, right? And obviously it's a play on God, Father, Son, Jesus Christ, sacrifice of your child. Mm-hmm. So I was thinking, man, like this is like playing out in real life. And I'm like, Matthew Kelly, you're freaking me out here. Mm-hmm. But I didn't know how to believe or what level to believe, I guess, how real it was or dangerous it was, or obviously none of us could have expected the impact it would have. Like many things that come from the media, I am always skeptical. I've been skeptical since I was a little kid. But obviously by March, it had invaded, right, mm-hmm. all the airwaves. We were, quote unquote, forced to deal with it from a business standpoint. We elected to offer our employees layoff. They were able to receive their pay, right? Our leadership team at Works thought, well, maybe we'll see 2 or 3 people. We saw 17 people immediately took it.
Wow.
And they were like, I'm staying home. And, they were obviously fearful enough to not come to work. That right there was the first inclination of, wow, there is a lot of people living in immense fear, which I relate to as different than concern, right? So there's a difference between concern and fear. And, as Christian, we are called to fear only losing the Lord. So fear really should not be in our vocabulary outside of fear of losing the Lord. Fear of the Lord, ever turning away from the Lord. And so I'm thinking about all this and I'm like, man, some of these guys are known Democrats. Some of these guys are known Republicans. Some of these guys were Christian, if you will, went to church. Some of these guys were not. And so it was across all the political and faith spectrums that this fear existed. That also, I guess, maybe surprised me to some extent. But nonetheless, we had to deal with it, right? And so within weeks, though, most of the guys came back. I think it's just kind of more or less maybe the initial shock of it all. Mm-hmm. So our business for 2020 went down 35%.
Wow.
So our sales went down 35%. Personally, a lot of frustration with, the government mandated shutdowns and thinking, how in the world can they do this? And this is setting a precedent. And if they can do this now, they can do it again. And what's that look like in the future? And on the positive side, so many stories about people spending more time with their family. Mm-hmm. So many stories were about people spending more time at home. And, and you think, what does that do to the hotel industry? What does it do to the airlines mm-hmm. industry, right? But I think we're asking the wrong questions because all that has to do with financial dollars. The real question is, but is that better for the family? When dad's home every night as opposed to in a hotel, or mom's home every night as opposed to in a hotel, that's a lot better for the family. It's a whole lot better for the family. And the vast majority of these young people are going into college completely unprepared, for the wickedness that exists on college campuses and so forth. And I think, man, if a lot of these kids are going to start doing school from home or choosing other paths, this could be a good thing. We may lose less souls.
You came through with all of those challenges and questions of the economic landscape. You feel a responsibility, I know this from our conversations, as you ought to, not just for your wife Liz and your children, but for 50-something employees. In terms of the decisions you make, there's a heightened weight on the decisions that you are making about the future of your company. And again, not just COVID, you're looking at political landscape. If you don't mind, just take a moment and tell me, in the midst of that, how you were personally forged, if you will, in those fires. How did Walt Erickson emerge from this stronger and, if you will, a better disciple?
Well, it's a deep question, my friend.
I know it is. I know you can answer it.
Obviously, I vote based on the Catholic Church moral teachings, pro-life. I believe in the dignity of everyone. I believe, that every one of our employees, I always strive to make sure that they do not have a glass ceiling, not just loving them as Christ does, but actually making sure that there is no glass ceiling for them. And what I mean by that is I want them to achieve all that they're able to achieve, right? Not what they can achieve for me. It's a huge difference there. On the political landscape, though, I mean, it was like two magnets the size of your house pushing against each other. You've got riots going on in all these cities, right? And you're thinking, man, what is going on? How can this be? People talking about like seriously talking about defunding the police and so forth. And I'm thinking, these same people are saying we can't have any guns. This just doesn't make any sense. And all the while, right, you're as a business owner, as a Christian business owner, you're not just reliant on making sure that your family is taken care of. You're relying on making sure all of the people at your work is taken care of. And if you are unwilling to sacrifice for them, you have not carried the cross that God has asked you to carry as a business owner, period. End of story. So clearly, it was a heavy burden for me. It continues to be, and I know it's God's call for me to carry it. But as you can see from my response to you, Greg, just a slew of emotions, right? Just a slew of scenarios that I'm trying to figure out and dodge and deal with. And, we had this warm and cozy economy and world going on, right, where everyone kind of kept their opinions to themselves, and all of a sudden things just blew up. Huge. You had to pick sides. Right, you have to pick sides. There's no middle ground. There is no middle ground. You have to decide. For example, one of my family members said, "Hey, you've got a certain political sign in your front yard. Now that we have a different president, don't you think you want to take that down? Don't you think you're putting yourself at risk?" And I'm like, that sign's not coming down. I said, that sign's going to stay up in my yard for the next 4 years. Same thing with my pro-life signs. I have a pro-life sign at work, and I have a pro-life sign at home. They'll never come down. If someone decides that they don't want to do business with Interstate Glass because I am pro-life, that's not my problem. That's their problem.
Key themes. Those are good themes.
Had to make these stances.
Well, thank you for that. A lot to pine in depth, but businessman dealing with the uncertain landscape, the responsibility, just the coming at home, the turn to home in spite of the tumultuous circumstances, the speaking boldly about things and finding a platform to talk about them, all really good themes. Let's go to Rich Cronin. Rich, tell us a little bit about your story, taking us back again. What were some of your greatest challenges and emerging through it? How are you a better person? What did you learn from it?
Well, thanks, Greg. My story, not so different than Walt's or anyone else's here. I'm the father of 3 college-age kids. I'm the owner of a couple of car dealerships. We employ about 140 employees. And so back in March of last year, I just remember that Sunday when the governor came on the air and announced that we had to flatten the curve and we were going to shut everything down. And, like everybody, it was kind of a surreal moment, particularly I immediately got a whole bunch of calls from employees saying, what do we do? Do we go to work or not? And I had to go into work and explain, we may not be able to stay open. We may be. Of course, our business is literally shut down, and the fact that people weren't buying cars or servicing them or anything else. So I had a lot of employees we had to let go. And over the next couple of weeks, we let go about half of our workforce.
Wow.
And so, just all of that. And then, of course, the bishops of Ohio coming out and saying, we're going to shut the churches down. I think that was probably the most traumatic thing of all the things we dealt with, because, I like to go to daily mass. I like to, our family is a good, faithful family. We need the Eucharist. We need the mass. And so shutting that down was extremely difficult for all of us. In fact, I remember on Easter Sunday, we, as a family, we decided during mass time, we would, try to make it as normal as we could in front of the TV. Mm-hmm. And so we sat down and we kneeled and we stood and did all those things.
We were with you.
And I remember at the end of the Easter Sunday Mass, my daughter just broke out and cried. Mm-hmm. It was really, she was just saddened by the fact that we couldn't be in Mass that day. And that day particularly struck me as a very, very difficult day. But, it was difficult throughout. I think what Walt touched on was the issue of fear. And fear is what permeated every aspect of our life, be it our family, our work, our faith, and school. So, everything was kind of ruled by fear. And so I do remember, from the most basic standpoint, you fear losing your business. And I certainly did that. Mm-hmm. But I immediately had to look at our employees and say, okay, these people fear losing their jobs. They fear losing their incomes. They fear losing their homes, all those things, because we don't know what's going to happen. And so we kind of had to come together as a team and really kind of talk through all the things that we're going to do. Luckily for us, the half of our workforce that remained just kind of worked, went about the business of working hard and doing the things that we knew we would have to do. We had experienced a General Motors strike the previous fall, and we know what happens when things shut down over a course of 5 or 6 weeks. Basically, supply completely shuts off. And that was just with one company, and we were looking at it from a global shutdown of the economy, that we knew that supplies would be extremely limited. So we immediately went to work to find inventory. And actually, there was a lot of people who were dumping inventory, and we were a buyer of it. So we knew that when things came back, the guys who didn't rule out of fear would be better off than those who kind of hunkered down and were fearful. So we went about the business of working hard. Fortunately for us, business came back strong in June, particularly in the auto business, and probably June through October was probably the 5 best months the auto business has seen in many, many, many years.
That's great.
We're very fortunate, and over the course of a couple of months, we're able to bring back all of our workforce. I think what we learned is that the blessings come in everyday life. The best blessings come with our family life, and it was beautiful. It was spring out, and I remember walking with our family. We'd walk with our family, out in the neighborhood, and every family in the neighborhood were walking. And I saw more families out in the neighborhoods than I ever see before. And so that was a beautiful thing. And so, that was a comfort for everybody to be around their families. Work is a tremendous blessing. And these politicians who think that they're doing us a favor by shutting things down are completely wrong, because people have to work. Work is it's a blessing to our families. It's a blessing to ourselves. This is what we need to do as a society, to get back to work. And then finally, I was so relieved when we were able to attend Mass again on Pentecost. And there was just this great exuberance of joy that permeated myself and my family on that Pentecost Sunday. And I always know that one of the precepts of the church is that you need to receive communion during the Easter period. And I thought, I got to get back to Mass. During the Easter period. And I remember getting that Eucharist on Pentecost Sunday and just feeling relieved and overjoyed that we were able to do that. And then finally, my kids were online in school during the entire period of time. This was not normal for them. I had son graduated from high school and a daughter graduated from college, and they had, Zoom graduations, and it was actually very sad, to tell you the truth, that they couldn't experience normal everyday life. And meanwhile, we look back, and the pandemic during that period of time isn't nearly what it was during November, December. And so I think, in June and July, we certainly could have been doing things to make it more normal, things like graduations and whatever else we needed to do. But, that's basically my experience. I think my experience is no different than a lot of everyone's.
Thank you, Rich. That's what's punctuated in your story there. Powerful theme is the power and the necessity of presence. Not just the power of presence, but the absolute necessity of presence for our health, for our well-being in every way. And as you spoke of the Mass in particular, that experience all of us had participating by watching on a screen, that would have been, if you will, a non-Catholic, evangelical, Protestant experience of what a Sunday service might be like at its best. We knew we were missing being in the presence of Jesus, John 6, that conviction for 2,000 years that Christ is truly present to us, body, blood, soul, and divinity. And if that's true, if Jesus said, "Verily, verily, I say unto you, unless you eat of my body and drink of my blood, you have no life within you," if we're not receiving him, we'll be languishing. We're going to experience some sense of being cut off. And yes, God can provide beyond his sacraments. God provides in every single way, but he gives us this gift of his sacraments that Catholics have discovered. And when we're away from it, and I just want to punctuate this message to anybody who's listening right now who've been away, and I might say unnecessarily. So you're going to Kroger's, you're getting your food, you're exposing in every other way. Why? Because you see the value of those things, but you're experiencing maybe a languishing. Just consider that maybe that's because you're not receiving what God designed you to receive, which is his presence. You're going to say, Rich.
Well, the Eucharist is both sacrament and sacrifice. And I think I always understood the sacrament part of it as receiving Jesus in the Eucharist. What I probably never truly understood was the sacrificial part of it. And that's what our Mass is the sacrifice of the Eucharist. So I think we all learned our participation in that sacrifice by having all these things happen to us. And it is truly a participation in the sacrifice of Christ on the cross, of Calvary, that we all participated in. And I think, for those who truly, for me personally, who started to understand that at a much deeper level than I ever understood, that was a blessing for me.
Phenomenal theme. And by the way, folks, just that word alone, sacrifice, sacrifice, literally means to make sacred, to make sacred. So when you think of sacrifice, you think of maybe blood, as we should. You think of this self-donation. It's painful. It hurts, right? We think of those ideas, and it literally is God's hand forging us to be like his son Jesus in the heart of Christ, to make us sacred. Let's go to Jeff Elmore now. Jeff, husband and father with Turning Point Chiropractic, and maybe a good pivot point because Jeff is in the realm of health and has studied the subject of virus and COVID quite extensively. We've had many conversations about that. So, Jeff, I want to allow you also, as you share a little bit of your story, please weave in some of the prominent themes, things you and I have spoken about that may be countercultural or counterintuitive. I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but some key things that maybe people are really missing in pursuing that truth through the fog.
You got it. So, yeah, we were in practice and we had heard about the coronavirus stuff, which is crazy. It's been almost a year. And one day we went into the office and our schedule was like poof, like 25% of our patients showed up. And we just sat there and we looked at each other. We looked at Gwen, our secretary, and we said, what in the world? And then you start getting, all these little articles and this and that and media things, and it starts blowing up. And so in full honesty, Rachel and I looked at each other for like 2 weeks into this and like deer in the headlights, like what in the world is going on? And we just took a second. We just said, listen, what we were trained to do is trained to think. And so we went back to our thought process. We turned off the news, turned off the media for a second. We just listened and said, what is going on? And we looked at our philosophy. And Rachel and all of us guys right now, and everyone listening to this right now, your heart is beating, your lungs are breathing, your kidneys are filtering, your liver's detoxing, your stomach's breaking down food, and you're not even thinking about it. Why? How does that work? It works because you are intelligent. There is intelligence in living matter. Trees are intelligent. Animals are intelligent. All living matter is intelligent. Why? Because we're connected to the source of intelligence. I believe it's God. We believe it's God. And so we're connected to that. But we're also humans. We're also exposed to emotional stress, physical stresses, and chemical stresses. So you go through a period of time, you listen to the political world, you listen to the national health people telling you to wear a mask and social distance. We need to shut everything down. We need to quarantine. We need to do all these things to stop a virus. And I look at it and say, no, we're all diabetic. We're all overweight. We're not exercising. We're not doing these things to make this immune system that God created work properly. And so Rachel and I just had to sit down. We're like, you know what? This is not right. And so we are going to work out of faith. We are not going to work out of fear. We're going to educate people in this time how to be healthier. Turn off CNN, turn off Fox News, turn off those things, get off the couch and exercise. Get rid of all the processed foods and all the sugary stuff. Let's work on our weight issues. Let's, for our mental health, turn off all that stuff, And so if we can reduce the amount of emotional, physical, chemical stresses on our body can be stronger and healthier. And I have people say, well, Dr. Jeff, that's like in an ideal world. We're in the middle of a pandemic right now. And I said, well, yeah, and at this point, it's in November, December. I'm like, yeah, but this pandemic's been going on for 9 months. Just think if you would have taken this stuff done, making these changes initially. Just think how much healthier you'd be in 30 days, 40 days, 60 days, 90 days. Just think how much healthier you would have been a year ago. And so we looked at it as a different stress and strain, and we just went into our faith more. Why are we designed this way? How are we designed? We see a lot of people making decisions out of fear or out of power, out of control. And we just said we didn't want that. And so being a business owner, we went to our staff and, 2 weeks in said, here's how we're going to operate. This is going to be a safe space. We are going to educate people on how health is actually achieved. And we're going to look at this. And when we would get more and more data coming in, you would find, okay, well, asymptomatic people can spread. Okay, asymptomatic people can't spread. Okay, we need to wear a mask. Okay, we don't need to wear a mask. Okay, actually, we do need to wear a mask. Let's wear a mask for 6 weeks. Oh, it's 6 months later. Okay, let's wear 2 or 3 masks. We look at it and we say, this is all ridiculous. And people are still going along with this because we're allowing them to. We said, this is a game and we don't want to play that game. We want to operate in faith and truth and goodness. And so our family, we kept our kids home from school, not because we're afraid of a virus, but because we don't want them to wear masks and social distance and be subjected to all this chaos. And so for our family, we've seen so much great benefit from it because we've been getting closer. We get to homeschool, we get to see their curriculum, we get to sit and talk to them at dinner. When I say, hey, what'd you learn at school today from Mom? And I get not a whole lot like they would if they were in school. I go, Mom, what did they learn today? And then she would say, okay, they learned this. Okay, now tell me about that. We get to have better conversations and be more connected to what they're learning. But we were talking to Isaac, our 6.5-year-old, yesterday, and we said, remember when we couldn't go to church? He's like, no, what are you talking about? Like, they closed masks, like we weren't allowed to go to church for a long time. We were watching it on TV. Do you remember that? No, no one told me that they closed churches.
That's funny.
I said, remember when our priest came over and had mass for us in our home so we could have the Blessed Sacrament? Well, yeah, I remember him coming, no one told me that churches were closed, And so we tried to operate as much as normal as we could. We would go to church, the churches were closed for masses, but a lot of the doors were unlocked. We'd go sit in adoration. We'd go sit in front of the Blessed Sacrament. We'd go sit in a pew and just pray. We would try to get the kids as involved as much as we could. But yeah, it was just it's just been an interesting year. And like I said, we can't believe it's a year and we're still having this conversation. Mm-hmm. We're still kind of struggling, piecing it together. We're kind of getting worn down and beaten down a little bit on our daily struggles of going against the culture. We feel like we've done that all along. We feel like we're going against the culture with alternative health and looking at the goodness of how the bodies are created. We feel like we're going against the culture of trying to dive deeper into our Catholic faith, trying to dive into the moral teachings of the church, setting politics aside. We can debate about immigration, we can debate about these things, but there are some moral things that we cannot debate about. And so we feel like we're getting hit over the head in all these different areas. And so it's a stress and it's a strain, but I had a patient who sent me, and Greg, you might cover this later, it was an interview with Pope Benedict in 1968, mm-hmm. or future Pope Benedict. And he talked about the future of the church. It's going to be a smaller, poorer, more faithful, more fruitful church. But it's going to see its big share of struggles. We're going to see a lot of social norms for the church being getting rid of, and it's going to be a very different place. And we're seeing it, and we're living it. And so we hope to be a part of that faithful and fruitful mm-hmm. church, and keep living that message.
Fabulous pivot point, Jeff, and I do want to circle back before the end of this program and just get your from the gut thoughts on health. Give us some great perspective on how we ought to think with regard to the COVID crisis. Is the culture overly hyped, and are we missing some significant areas of health because of the focus of that hype in one area to the complete disregard of others? So let me store that in your memory, and we'll go to that. No, absolutely. You sent me that article from when he was just Father Joseph Ratzinger in 1969, and he predicted the future of the church. I'll have this in my show notes, igniteradiolive.com, for you all to check this out, but it's quite prolific, and I'm just going to read one of the paragraphs at the end of that. So this then Father Ratzinger stated, again in 1969, "But when the trial of this sifting is past, a great power will flow from a more spiritualized and simplified church. Men in a totally planned world will find themselves unspeakably lonely. If they have completely lost sight of God, they will feel the whole horror of their poverty. Then they will discover the little flock of believers as something wholly new. They will discover it is a hope that is meant for them, an answer for which they have always been searching in secret." Just a part of this phenomenal prophecy, again, from then Father Joseph Ratzinger, the man who would be Pope Benedict XVI. And on that pivot point, we've had three business owners, again, all wonderful husbands, fathers, very devout Catholic men. We turn to Drew Blazek, Professor Drew, who has a wide range of insight on all of these things. And just what are your thoughts, Drew? Take us back a year, and again, challenges, and how have you been formed in it? How are you a better person?
At the time, I was working at a county job. And of course, I was surrounded by a lot of liberal people, and they flock around me. And we had some good conversations.
That's why we're here.
This is what I noticed. I remember when it first happened, I just couldn't understand what was going on with the churches before even the governor said anything. You had our bishop, you have many bishops shut down the churches before anything. They're so quick to shut down the sacraments before even the governor said a word. And I don't think our governor even said you have to shut down the churches. This was something the bishops volunteered, and this was something that I don't think was really even a good reason to. Now, they were scared, and I think people are driven by the media. Whatever the mainstream media perpetrates, that's what people try to think is truth, and that's what they go by. Even if truth is in there and truth is somewhere else, but unless the media shows it, people don't really care about it. Mm-hmm. So this is what I learned. And in Canada, in the US, you still have bishops that shut down. I want you to think about this. They shut down the mass. If you're about to die, you couldn't get last rites. If you couldn't go to confession, they said no confession. Priests had to go underground and do it against the bishop. I'm not saying that happened in Ohio. It didn't happen in Toledo to that extent, but there are still places like that. In Canada, you can't have more than 10 people in certain areas to go to mass. So if you had a couple hundred people, of course, not everybody can go to mass. It's still going on today. So I was talking to this guy, and we always got into some pretty good debates. And I said, I can't believe they're shutting down the churches. He couldn't believe I said that. And I said, hey, do you have a problem with people going to Kroger? Why are we going to Kroger? Why is Home Depot open? He goes, oh, they're essential. And I said, don't you understand the bishops? Everybody's saying that church is not essential. Home Depot is more important than the mass. That's what they're saying. Mm-hmm. Now, I didn't hear one church person say, or leader in the church say, why is Lowe's open? Nobody complained about that. So you had hundreds of people walk in here, think about that, touching packages, and nobody's afraid of getting sick. But people in mass, people go to confession, that's horrible. So I learned that some of our leaders do not believe that the sacraments are essential. That's number one. Mm-hmm. Number two, dualism, where this is the same heresy that goes around, that you can say they said spirit was more important, the body isn't at the beginning of the church. And now they're saying the body is more important and the spirit, the soul is not important. And you see that playing out. And that's where it goes to that. Yeah, you can go to Kroger because the body is important, but the soul is not. And I believe it goes back to that. Some church people play out, all men are saved. What does it matter? 99% of people are going to heaven, so it does not matter at all.
Great point. Pause on that a second, Drew, because it's not inconsequential that there's a sufficiency, right? There's a sufficiency that I'm good with God. Nothing else really matters. There's not an attentiveness to what it means to walk in our salvation and for that to be worked out, as Paul says, in fear and trembling. Just, if you don't mind, as a fairly new Catholic, and as you see, maybe you must be stunned a little bit that Catholics, in a sense, act the same way, that a sense of, hey, I don't need to go to Mass. I don't need the sacraments. Just speak into that. I'm giving you an opportunity to lay it out there maybe a little thicker.
Jesse's grandmother was dying, and I asked to have a priest to come in, to anoint her. Mm-hmm. And one of the relatives, which was Catholic, said, why are you bringing a priest in? She's saved. Mm-hmm. So they make that assumption. It's the worst thing to do. If you have a loved one that passed away, we make that assumption the person's saved. We have no clue. It's up to God. But we do know we can offer sacrifice. We can pray for that soul. I think that's the problem. People think that they are saved no matter what. And that goes in with a lot of leaders of the church that preach that. And I think that's a big problem. Another point I want to bring up was this thought that we have to shut things down to save people. I asked that same liberal person, I said, the UN just did a study. You can look it up. I think it was in March. And they used the word biblical, that there's going to be mass famine of biblical proportions because of shutdown. The food supply has been interrupted. So I asked the person, are you okay with millions upon millions could die of famine, poor people in these countries, because you want to be shut down and protected from a sickness? And it was really interesting. If you know anything about politics, they believe in globalism. And know what the response I got from the person is, well, America first, which blew me away because I was so against the liberal point of view. But they're okay, think about it, that millions will die. And I don't know if you guys seen it, there are reports of mass famine that's happening around the world right now because of the shutdown. The UN said it's directly because of the shutdown that these people are dying right now. And the media is not reporting it because it goes against that narrative that it's safe for us to shut everybody down. So 2 other points I want to bring up. One thing that Walt brought up, which I was thinking about, before the Industrial Revolution, this is what people kind of forget. The mother and the father worked from home, the family business. So the kids got to see the father every day. The kids got to work with the dad. They got to learn the business. And what happened was the Industrial Revolution took the father out of the home and it separated the mother and the father. The father was earning the income. Then it caused, I mean, if you look at the studies, and then the father said, oh, this is my money. And then what about this? And then they'll use it on alcohol. And that really caused a divide in marriages. before it was the wife and the husband working together for the family business. So it was one income. You didn't have divorce. And the father was taken out. And this was before the sexual revolution with the woman taken out. And I see a lot of businesses that you don't have to work in the office. You could bring that back to the home. Now, some you can't, but I see a great advantage with technology that if you can work from home, that's better. And then if you implement your kids to show what you do from the home, I think that's a positive from it. And the last point I wanted to bring up, we have to do what is according to our state in life. I'm not in politics. I have a certain responsibility to speak the truth, but my responsibility is my family, my friends, and whenever the truth has to come up, I have to say it. We need to turn off, Fox News, CNN. We have no control over that stuff. We shouldn't stress over that stuff. All we can do is pray and speak the truth. We need to be responsible for according to our state of life and not live this virtual reality of what is going on in Washington, what is going on here, and we have no control over it. Can you imagine Mary and Joseph was, going to Egypt, escaping for their lives, and they're like, man, I wonder what's going on with the emperor of Rome. I wonder what's the political realms going on. And Mary's stressing out about it, like, why didn't they do this bill? It didn't have, or I wonder what King Herod is doing. All they worried about was their family. And I think that's what a positive to is really putting in perspective of what's going on. Don't stress out about it. Just worry about your family, worry about speaking the truth when it comes up. I think that's important. Media consumption needs to go down. Like I have family members that are consumed with it, and that can really stress you out. We can't be consumed with things we have no control. Like what did Jesus say? Why stress? Trying to think the exact words, but you can't even change the color of your hair. Like there's nothing you can do there. Let tomorrow play out. Don't live in the past. Don't live in the future. Don't worry about the future. Just live in the present. Father Wolf mentioned, I love this saying, it's like today's moment, the present is the only time you can be a saint, the only time you can grow in virtue, the only time you can gain an indulgence, the only time you can do sacrifices for loved ones, not the future and not the past. We only have the moment, the present.
Fabulous.
That's something that I'm really trying to learn with. And then I'm just to end this with, because I love Marian apparitions and stuff. If we didn't have Mary that came down at Lourdes and Fatima, and I learned of another one, I can't think of the name. It was in the 1950s that it was the same message of Fatima, and Pope Benedict in 2011 approved it. I never heard of this one. There's messages after message approved by the church. It's really important not to get carried away with unapproved messages. That we have the Queen of Heaven on our side, and we know how it's going to play out. We just got to be faithful in our lives. We may see the result of the triumph of the church, or we may not. And if we don't, we just have to do our point. We have just a small time in history that we're going to live. I could die next year, and it's got to be faithful for what I have and not worry about, Don't get caught up too much about prophecies. All we have, I might die tomorrow. What does it matter about what's going to happen 200 years from now?
Drew, phenomenal. Very much appreciative for our listening audience. If you want to hear a fuller treatment of God speaking from heaven through private revelations in our recent decades even, check out our program at IgniteRadioLive.com featuring Drew Blazek. Just do a search on that. With Drew, your comment about social media, another encouragement and resource to parents, please, with your kids, watch the movie The Social Dilemma. It's essentially showcasing from the perspective of executives of these companies, Twitter and Facebook and Google, their grave concerns of what this monstrosity, this Leviathan has become initially. And it can do a lot of good things. Those of you who know me know I am engaged in media, social media, so is Drew. I think a lot of these guys are here. But how built into its very ecology are factors that are meant to addict us, to ensnare us. So check out also Tristan Harris. Anything that he's got his own podcast, just as it sounds, Tristan Harris, as he talks about this with great insight. And again, these aren't even Catholics from a Catholic or Christian perspective. They're simply addressing the detriment to the human person as a result of this social Leviathan that has promised to satisfy things in the human person that it simply can't satisfy. Drew, before I cut you off and open the door to a final question as we land here, I'm so grateful for all of you being with us here on Ignite Radio Live. Drew, why should families pray a daily rosary?
I'm trying to think, I can't remember what the Pope was. He likes simple answers to it, and they say, why do you pray the rosary? And as simple as so we can be made worthy of the promises of Christ. As simple as that. But number two is because the Queen of Heaven didn't get off her throne to come down to earth just to see what was going on in Portugal at the time. She didn't come down and say, hey, what's going on? She came down for a purpose, and she asked everyone to pray the rosary every day. So if the Queen of Heaven asked that, and if you look at the writings of it, she said there's only two things that can solve the world's problems that God has left. Because in this time, if you look at all the prophecies, God is sending her mother or his mother one last time before the chastisement. That's what it is. Send it one last time. The world will listen. It was to pray the rosary and do the devotion to the Immaculate Heart. That's what the Fatima message is. And it's just so important. And then apart from just because heaven is asking and want to be obedient, it's because you're actually meditating on the mysteries of the Gospels. And it's not just saying those words, but it's actually meditating on those mysteries. And those alone can really help the soul to get away from sin. And a last point, Saint Teresa Avila said that it's impossible to meditate on the Passion and to sin. You're either going to give up the meditation or you're going to give up the sin. You
Powerful
can't do
point.
both. And I think that's why we do it.
Quick, endearing story. The Blazicks, Drew, Jesse, and family live behind the woods, or I should say we're separated by a little woods, and some of you may know the story that our daughter, Grace, kind of paved the 100-yard path between our neighborhood and theirs. Took a couple days to do it. And last summer, very endearing, sometimes nights in a row, some of the Blazick kids would make their way through this path and emerge into our backyard and invite us to pray the rosary with them, which is so beautiful, so beautiful as a witness and a testimony. And I encourage those of us, first of all, to get our rosary game together. Lent's coming up. Why not? Make that a commitment and discover the grace outpoured. But for those of you who are in your game, it's a simple way to engage others also to pray. Invite neighbors and others to join you. This is the way it, quote unquote, used to be. This is the way we really defeat the enemy, right? If God is about presence, descending from heaven and entering into this earth in real presence, as we spoke of in John 6, the enemy is going to attack by distance, by alienation, by separation. So we defeat the gates of hell by creating contexts of real presence. Just think about that. I'll even say, as a capacity for those who aren't Catholic, my son John Paul at Hillsdale College, I was surprised as he shared the story, but he would go on rosary walks and he'd kind of pull fellow friends out of the dorms, whether they're Catholic or not, to join them, and they ended up becoming regulars, non-Catholic Christian kids. Why? Because he explained, as Drew said, the mysteries that are in Scripture of Christ's life, to go there. In the rosary, essentially, right, if you break apart the prayer, it's essentially all scriptural, and then, of course, the part of asking the saints to pray for us. Well, which of us don't ask the saints to pray for us? You ask somebody that you know is close to Christ, and is there anybody closer to Christ than his Blessed Mother? I want to circle back just quickly on... Please, Drew.
Is that I always forget, everyone should look up the 15 promises of the rosary that Mary told St. Dominic. And those promises, our mother does not lie. So those promises are true, and you should read them. And if you doubt that those promises happened, there's a miracle that happened in South America where she appeared to a little kid, and her image, you can look it up, is still in the rock. And scientists looked at it, and it goes 3 to 4 feet deep. The painting, it's impossible. Wow. But the picture is her handing the rosary to St. Dominic, and then there's another saint. I'm not sure who it is, but it shows the authenticity of it. So
for those rightly looking for empirical evidence, and there is value there, or Christ would not have taken empirical flesh and blood for us to connect with him. We wouldn't have the empirical story of history. So the empirical realm is very important. Read the encyclical Faith and Reason. Fides et Ratio is very good for this day and age to understand how both faith and reason are meant to work together. Let me go back to Dr. Jeff here as we're coming in for a landing, and then just open it up to any of you with any thoughts or comments from anything anybody had shared here tonight. But Dr. Jeff, so I do think this this battle, this shadow of eternity, is really playing out through things like viruses. It does play out through things the way in which we're taught to think about viruses, and we know that there's a higher rate of depression than ever recorded in human history in the past year, largely because of the emphasis on this, the way we should respond to the virus. So as a Catholic clinician, as a doctor who's dealt with this, give us what you perceive from your study, a godly perspective of how we should look at the virus in our own lives.
I just can't believe in practice the amount of fear in our teenage kids, in our late 8, 9, 10-year-olds, the amount of fear and anxiety this is instilled upon them. I think a trend that we've seen in here is that in this conversation today is about how many people go to school and how many people go to the grocery store and how many people do this and do this sport, but yet mass is too dangerous to go to. I mean, as a health practitioner, to think that you're going to be sitting in pews that are blocked off every other one, you're going to go for the mass, and then you're going to leave, that there's major health implications that you can't do these things because you're going to all these other places and doing all these other things. Now, I understand, that people do have really bad immune systems because of diabetes, obesity, heart disease, the wear and tear on our decisions over our 60, 70 years of life. And so I don't want to sound like I'm living in this fantasy land of the impact of a virus that somebody could get and could make them really sick, and it could even cause them to pass away. I'm not downplaying that, but I'm just saying we need to be educating people on a different strategy. We need to be focusing on bringing people together in community and creating accountability groups. We're doing a fast through our office, a Daniel's fast, and we're asking for patients to do it with us. We're going to start, every morning with a 5-minute, meditation. Pray on think about a relationship you're struggling with. Think about something that you're going to offer up your sacrifice for that day. So I think we just need accountability. And it's hard to do that when we're all told not to gather, not to communicate, and not to talk. I think that the strategy needs to be focused on bringing us back to what God intended for our lives. That's not social distancing, mask use, and gobs of hand sanitizer and vaccines and all of that stuff. God intended us to be natural, to reduce our chemical, physical, mental stresses. We call them our 3 T's: thoughts, traumas, toxins, and to live a more full life in relation to Him. I can go all day about what your interests are, what the medical, what the pharmaceutical, what the insurance interests are in you. And I tell people it's not your health. They have a bottom line that they are trying to protect and they are trying to gain, whether it's power, whether it's money, whether it's control, whatever. It's not about you. We need to make it about us. We need to make it about God's plan for us. And we can do that by eating good foods, praying, exercising, being active, spending time with our families, forming our children, and educating them, so we don't have those anxious teenagers in our lobby anymore. The ones that are on their phone, on social media, reading all these horrible stories, and that are so paranoid that they're going to fall over and die if they go to church.
That's awesome. Thanks so much for that, Jeff. We're going to have a dedicated program where we talk about, shall we say, things hidden in darkness, things that maybe many of our listeners aren't aware of that are at play in the narrative about COVID and health and from a faith perspective. So anticipate that coming down the road in the next few weeks. Folks, we got about 30 seconds for each of you to give us a final word just from being here tonight. By the way, I'm so grateful that all of you took time to come together and share your story, share what's happening here. I think just us opening the door to conversation is very important, and to address some of these very key issues with the awareness, again, that God is sovereign. So final word, Walt.
I've asked my own family, and I ask all of our extended family and friends, just always be honest with yourself. Be honest with yourself. And therefore, be honest then with everyone else. In particular, we have a family member who has been petrified through this whole thing, the whole way through. And I was so impressed with her because very recently here, right, she has access to this, the vaccine. She said, you know what? I'm not going to get the vaccine. And I was dumbfounded. And I said, well, why aren't you going to get the vaccine? I thought you were, absolutely going to get this vaccine. She's like, one, I do not want to operate in fear anymore. She said, number two, I just feel like this is a mask for everything else. And she's like, I feel like this is a fake shield, if you will. And she's like, I don't want to do this. She's like, I want to be truly healthy in a different way. And I've realized I've been waiting for this. And now that it's here, it's like, I don't think this is the right thing to do. I'm very impressed by her looking inside of herself and being honest. And I think all of us here, have seen so many people they know what the truth is. Like they know there's stuff that's messed up, but for some reason they just are unwilling to be honest with themselves and others. And I ask for honesty.
Great word. Rich, final word.
Based on what I've heard from everybody is we all control our own sphere of influence. And I think that is the most important thing we can do is just change the way we live. And, I can't worry about what politicians are doing what and what people are doing what. I can control what I'm doing and what our family's doing and the people around me are experiencing. So I need to control that. The one thing I have done over the last couple of months is really turn off all media. I think it's pollution to the heart and soul to be so glued to the CNN, Fox News, whatever station you like. It's horrible stuff, and it's some of it's true, most of it is not, and we can't determine what is and what is not. So I think we just turn it off. And then the last thing, I think our mass attendance is off probably 60 to 70%, depending on the areas. And, people have not come back. Christmas mass was empty. I think we need to begin to invite people back. And it's just, if we don't see people at mass, we don't see families, we need to invite them back and say, you know what? We need you. We want you. Please come back.
Thanks so much, Rich. Final word, Jeff.
After this last year, we've watched so much stuff that will blow your mind. And what is true and what's not true, we have no idea. We know that Jesus Christ is true. We know that we are going to die. That's a part of life. And when we meet him after we die, we want to know that we operated in truth and in his truth. And so that's what we're focusing on, unplugging from all of the secularism and diving into him. And so when we do die, that is the truth, when we will all die, that we can be in a good place.
So good. Final word, Drew.
I would say be careful of information, where you get it from, be wise, and know that most of the media is owned by big business. Most of what's going on because of globalism, big business. So it's got to be careful, find good sources that you trust, listen to it, and ignore the propaganda. And like what Jeff said, one thing we know, we all die. One thing we don't know is how and when. So be prepared.
Awesome. Walt Erickson, Rich Cronin, Jeff Elmore, Drew Blazik, two wonderful men. So blessed to be united with you in such a time as this, in, if you will, a fog of war that invites us to have faith, to trust in God. As we've included in our prayer as a family over the last 2 years, it's been very formidable, and maybe punctuating this night, we pray, Lord, thank you for the discomfort. Thank you for the difficulties. Thank you for the challenges, because they're occasions that you forge us into the likeness and image of your Son, Jesus. It's an opportunity to love purely. And so I leave that with all of you wonderful listeners tonight, and so blessed to be on this journey with you. Just know God's sovereignty, proclaim it, receive it, get to Mass, receive the grace, trust in God. He is the provision for our poverty. So blessed to be on the journey with you. Until next time, God bless you.